Socy Dark Talks is back. Planning on getting a good night's sleep tonight? Think again. Let's hear 4 true ghost stories that will haunt your dreams in the night. Story 1. Under the Riverbed. A few years ago, after a painful divorce, Audrey found solace in long trips with his 2 closest friends, Fallon and Erica. One fresh morning, while en route to Carlsbad, New Mexico, they stopped by a river dam to enjoy some cider and snacks. Nearby their camping spot, there was a nearly dry river, revealing only mud and animal carcasses. Spontaneously, Audrey, followed by Erica, decided to explore the nearly dry riverbed, leaving Fallon behind to watch their belongings. As they approached the riverbed, it became apparent they were not the first to wander there. The clear prints of human, dog, and cat feet in the mud confirmed it. As they roamed, an uncomfortable feeling crept up, a strange sensation of being watched. Suddenly, Fallon, who was sitting on the truck, urgently signaled them to return. Through binoculars, Fallon realized that what lay in the bushes were not animal spines, but human remains. However, the distance between the 2 groups was too great, so Audrey and Erica couldn't hear their friends' hoarse calls. Ignoring Fallon's desperate shouts, Audrey's group continued their exploration, only to stumble upon a rust-colored object protruding from the sand. Upon closer inspection, they realized it wasn't a rock, but a half-buried little girl's shoe. Instinctively, Audrey stepped back, ready to kick the shoe away. But just then, a plaintive cry tore through the stifling air.
"No, don't, please."
They froze, scanning around, but saw no one but themselves. "Didn't you hear that, little girl?" Audrey exclaimed, but Erica just looked back at him, puzzled. Deciding to dismiss it, they continued, yet the feeling of being watched grew stronger. Minutes later, they discovered another bone. This time, there was no mistaking it. It was human. At that moment, Audrey truly understood Fallon's warnings. Both quickly ran back toward the shore. Erica, being less athletic, ended up lagging. As she ran, she felt her body sinking deeper into the mud. Looking down, Erica realized she had mistakenly run into a marshy bog. Before she could call for help, small children's hands emerged from the water's surface, and Erica was swiftly pulled deep into the bog. Audrey turned back upon hearing her screams, but he only caught a glimpse of Erica's hand before it disappeared under the thick mud. He rushed towards the spot in desperation, trying to find any sign of Erica, but it seemed everything had been swallowed up. From a distance, Fallon screamed, urging Audrey to get away from the dangerous bog. Heartbroken and terrified, Audrey had no choice but to heed his friend's advice, hastily retreating towards the truck in despair. On their way to the nearest town, Fallon called for rescue and the police. The authorities quickly arrived at the scene. They deployed rescue equipment and began searching for Erica, but the bog was too deep and dangerous. After hours of unsuccessful searching, the rescue team could only declare that Erica had no chance of survival. As the police continued to investigate the human bones found, they also discovered more signs that the area had been the site of several unresolved disappearances over the years. Further investigations revealed that the bog might have been the burial site for the victims, and the voice Audrey heard might have been the spirit of one of those unfortunate victims. Audrey and Fallon returned with a heavy heart, carrying the weight of a loss that was indescribable. Particularly for Audrey, the shock was not only emotional following his divorce, but now also due to the mysterious death of his friend from what was supposed to be a mere leisure trip. Story 2. Ouija board warning. In 2013, Giselle and her friends, seeking excitement amid their monotonous rural lives, decided to use a homemade Ouija board. This decision came at a particularly sensitive time, as just a week earlier, while Giselle was staying at her friend Jenny's house, a terrifying incident occurred. At 3 a.m., Giselle was awakened by the disturbing sound of heavy footsteps progressing down the hallway towards their bedroom. Paralyzed with fear, she tried to wake her sleeping friend, but to no avail. The footsteps abruptly stopped just outside the bedroom door, and Giselle spent the rest of the night wide awake, dreading a door handle turn that never came. The next morning, 𝐒𝐿𝐤𝐚 quickly shared the strange event with Jenny, who dismissed it as a possible misunderstanding or a dream. That same night, the group assembled their Ouija board, a decision they would soon regret. Initially, their game was filled with laughter and fun, but a loud explosion from behind the house abruptly ended their enjoyment. Deciding to ignore the source of the noise, they concluded it was best to take a break. Jenny drove everyone home, leaving 𝐒𝐿𝐤𝐚 alone in the eerily quiet house. Feeling anxious after the earlier creepy events, 𝐒𝐿𝐤𝐚 turned on the TV to distract herself, but her calm was short-lived. While watching a music show, the TV screen froze with a loud buzzing noise. Her remote control was unresponsive. She tried to unplug the device, but the buzzing continued relentlessly. Terrified, 𝐒𝐿𝐤𝐚 stepped outside, preferring the cold night air to the bizarre chaos inside Jenny's house. Overwhelmed with despair, she texted Jenny, pleading for her to come home as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the usually calm dogs began to bark fiercely at the living room door, growling as if threatened by an unseen presence. After about 30 minutes of tense waiting, Jenny finally returned home. They could hear the loud noise of the TV from the porch, but upon entering, they found the TV had completely turned off. Neither of them could explain what had happened, but the feeling that something was not right became increasingly clear. Checking the Ouija board, they saw the letters moving slowly as if guided by an invisible hand. The room turned chillingly cold, and a deep fear overtook them. 𝐒𝐿𝐤𝐚 bravely asked the board, "Who are you?" The letters spelled out, MORGAN. As this name appeared, a cold wind blew through the room, rattling the windows. Realizing they were dealing with an uncontrollable entity, the quiet night was soon pierced by the girls' screams. The next morning, 𝐒𝐿𝐤𝐚's friends returned to Jenny's house to continue the game, but they were met with the chilling sight of their two friends' frozen corpses. The story didn't end there. All the friends who participated in the Ouija session that night suffered mysterious deaths. Everyone assumed that the girls had died from overdosing on stimulants or falling victim to murderers. Numerous reasons were suggested and discussed for years. However, the true cause behind their deaths remained unknown to all. Story 3. Haunted by My Sister's Doll. Ever since a school discussion about the chilling Chucky movie, Verity had harbored a deep-seated fear of dolls. This fear was manageable when the only doll in their house was a harmless Barbie. However, the equilibrium was disrupted one Christmas when their sister received an unsettling gift: 2 porcelain dolls with glassy, piercing eyes and a large, old-fashioned rag doll. These dolls sent shivers down Verity's spine. Whenever they had to enter their sister's room, they would turn each doll to face the wall, unable to shake the feeling of being watched by their inanimate eyes. But soon, simple Verity's actions seemed to provoke something unexplainable and frightening. One chilling morning, Verity awoke to find deep red scratches across her back, with no recollection of pain or contact. Mysterious cuts and scratches started appearing on Verity's hands and knees, as if from nowhere. The incidents unnerved Verity, filling them with a dreadful sense of foreboding. The most terrifying encounter occurred one afternoon when Verity was home alone. Seeking to escape the eeriness by indulging in video games, Verity ventured into her sister's room to fetch the Dreamcast. As usual, she turned all the dolls against the wall, their backs whispering silent protests. It was then that Verity heard it, a soft, sinister giggle of a little girl. Chills ran down her spine as she turned to see the rag doll, previously facing the wall on the bed, slowly pivoting its head to stare directly at her with a stitched, mocking smile. Panic took over. Verity dashed from the room, her heart pounding as she slammed their bedroom door shut and locked themselves inside, trembling as they waited for the safety of their family's return. When their mother and sister finally arrived, they dismissed Verity's frantic story as a product of their imagination. Frustration bubbled as their sister discovered her beloved rag doll had mysteriously fallen to the floor. Determined to rid themselves of the fear that had taken hold, Verity decided it was time to act. The next morning, under the gray light of dawn, she took the rag doll and threw it into the dumpster, a mix of relief and fear coursing through their veins as they watched the bin swallow the source of their nightmares. The origin of the haunted rag doll traces back to an old and long-forgotten folklore tied to the town where Verity's family lived. Decades earlier, a local toy maker, known for her exquisite handcrafted dolls, became embroiled in a tragic tale of loss when her only daughter mysteriously disappeared. Consumed by grief and desperation, the toy maker supposedly turned to dark rituals, imbuing her last creation, a rag doll, with the spirit of her lost child in a misguided attempt to bring her back. The doll, however, absorbed not only the essence of her daughter, but also the toy maker's sorrow and madness, creating a vessel filled with malevolent energy. Years passed, and the tale faded into obscurity, with the doll exchanging hands through various antique stores, ultimately landing as a Christmas gift for Verity's sister, its ominous history long since forgotten by the townsfolk. After Verity disposed of the doll, a palpable sense of dread lingered. Nights were restless, filled with the echoes of a child's laughter and the faint sound of footsteps pacing back and forth outside her room. Verity struggled with the growing fear that tossing the doll hadn't ended the curse, but had instead freed the spirit to haunt her more directly. Story 4. Who exactly did I take care of? When I was 16 years old, babysitting was an additional source of income, and I was lucky enough to have many families in my area that needed a babysitter. A lady who babysat quite often asked me one day if I would mind caring for her sister's baby. She mentioned that her sister had a hard time keeping a babysitter. Well, of course, I thought it was due to the child. I didn't mind at all. I quickly accepted the job, meaning more income for myself, and she was a super nice lady. However, her husband was a surly man who bore the weight of the world in his scowl. Upon arriving, Mrs. Thompson warned me the house had its eccentricities. It groaned and creaked, as if protesting its very existence. "Ring me if anything feels off," she insisted, her tone laced with anxiety that seemed excessive for just a creaky house. My first week was uneventful. A few weird noises, but I just dismissed them. One distinctive thing that I remember about the house was that it was always dark. Even on the brightest day, it was always really dark. During the day, you still had to have the lights on, even with the curtains open. The baby, who was only 6 months old, had a cute rainbow nightlight. It was an older one that you manually had to use some force to click on and off. Once it lightened up some in the morning, I would go and turn off the nightlight. Well, morning came and I turned off the nightlight. I went out to the living room to catch up on some homework, and as soon as I got settled, the baby started screaming. I rushed into his room. He was hysterical, and the nightlight was on. I know for a fact that I turned it off. It wasn't a mistake or something I thought I did. I played it in my mind over and over and over again. I know that I turned that light off. I took the baby and comforted him. I was so disoriented and scared I didn't even try to turn it off again. I thought if something wanted it on, it could be on. I didn't tell his mother about the nightlight. Every day she would come and ask me if everything was okay. And I knew she wasn't just talking about her son. Over the next few weeks, the experiences came more and more often. Lights turning on and off and doors closing by themselves. All of the events finally came to a peak. I was in the kitchen mixing oatmeal for the baby when from behind something tugged the bottom hem of my shirt. It was so hard that my shirt tightened around my neck. I turned around and no one was there. I screamed and ran into the living room where the baby stared at me from his high chair like I was crazy. The Thompsons moved out later that year, their departure as hasty as it was unexplained. I remained the one constant in a line of fleeting caretakers. Years passed, and the memories of those eerie months gradually faded into the recesses of my mind, like a disturbing dream one struggles to remember upon waking. Life carried me forward through college and into a career, but something about that house, that time, clung to me, an unresolved mystery that whispered in the quiet moments. Don't forget to like and subscribe our channel so you won't miss out any creepy tales and scary adventures in the upcoming videos. This is Socy Dark Talks. Stay curious and embrace the darkness.